Hey guys, welcome to a new episode of Saw Something Scary. Jeff Wright, Derek Zoo here with you with our continuation of It Week. Jeff, what's going on, man? How are you?
You know, I'm doing okay. I in some ways, I guess, Derek, I'm kind of down because this is the last movie I really got super excited to see for the calendar year, you know? I guess Joker has gotten more interesting, and the new Zombieland will be fun too, but like this is the one that, you know, I guess for more than a year and a half, you just kind of been sitting around saying that's it in 2019, and on the far side of it, man, I feel like I don't have any more hope.
That's bleak.
Yeah, man, I'm glad to start black this morning.
Yeah.
I'll be seeing Frozen 2 as well. Don't get it twisted, but
yeah,
you know, this is kind of the tentpole movie on the other side of Us, and it's come and gone now, and I'll go back and see it again. But anyway, just a rough moment as a movie fan.
So you're not that excited for Dr. Sleep?
Yeah, I am. Just not as much as I was for It Chapter 2. I mean, there's good stuff, you know, but like this was supposed to be the experience, you know. It's more than 2 hours and the big payoff, and I don't know. I just I guess I don't want to say melancholy. I just feel like I'm on the far side of something I anticipated for a long time.
Well, I understand that. I want to apologize right off the bat for how I sound. I just got out of It Chapter 2, so extremely tired. So, as we normally do for tentpole movies like this, we're going to skip the horror reporter and Jeff H. trailers and just go straight into the main event. So, you want to pull the string on this thing?
Could I take just a moment and apologize for something?
Absolutely.
So before we pull the string, I owe you and our listeners an apology. So as Derek mentioned, this is It Week for us. We've been re-releasing our previous content on the adaptations of the Stephen King novel, and Derek recorded a dope intro to the 2017 Chapter 1, and I spent the night mixing that thing up and failed to upload it. And so you just got the review content. I guess that was Thursday. And so anyway, Derek, I'm sorry I wasted your time, and listener, I'm sorry you didn't get that sweet nugget of Derek's dulcet voice as you listen there. And I feel like a heel for that.
Oh, no, man, you're fine. No big deal at all. Apology accepted, but not needed.
Well, that's gracious of you. I still feel like a big dummy. It was amateur hour, apparently, when I was uploading that episode.
Man, stuff happens. It's no big deal. I only thing I was concerned about was that I had uploaded the stuff wrong. So
no, you sounded quite fabulous, my friend. I apparently just thought it belonged in the digital wasteland of my recycle bin.
That's okay. Sometimes you want to be selfish and just keep things for yourself. It's no big deal.
Well, thanks for being gracious, and again, my apologies. My contrition being completed, I am ready to pull the string, sir. Why don't you lead us through it?
Let's do it to it, man. It Chapter 2. So I don't know how you want to go with this, so I'm just gonna throw some stuff at you, and you can tell me how you want to start off. What are your initial thoughts, like out of the gate?
Well, the thing that pressed in on me from about 10 minutes into the movie till I got home late last night is a term that is overused, but I really feel like it fits here. I felt like I watched a fever dream. I mean, that movie was big and bold and went everywhere and sprawled and just crazy stuff I didn't anticipate. I mean, I've read the novel. I've watched the 1990 miniseries multiple times. I've watched the 2017 film multiple times. I mean, I couldn't be more familiar with this material. And Muschietti took us on a journey, man. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to go with Fever Dream. What about you?
Initially, like my initial thoughts are, if you'd cut half an hour of it, I would have been on here singing the praises of a masterpiece. But man, like I felt all 2 hours and 49 minutes in that movie.
Yeah.
And here's my disclaimer on that is I had to go late last night. So when I say that I just got out of it, I'm not too far off from actually really just getting out of it. I had to go to the 10:45 showing of it last night. So I got out of the theater at 1:50 and I was home at 2:15. And just to pull back the curtain, we're recording this at 7:27 in the morning. So that could have had something to do with it. Like if I would have went to see this at like 8 o'clock last night and gotten out at 11, maybe it wouldn't be so bad. But as I'm sitting there in my comfortable reclining chair,
grumble,
enjoying my pizza and s'more shake from Alamo Draft House. Sorry, I gotta rip it in.
You're the movie attending 1%, pal.
Well played. As I was sitting there with all that, it just, don't get me wrong, the third act is amazing and you completely forget what's going on. But the build up to the third act, there were certain spots where I was like, okay, let's everyone find their token and let's everyone get this thing on the road. Like an hour into it, I remember being like, I have 2 more hours of this mess?
Well, I relate to that. So the specific point in the movie for me that I kind of realized, like, oh my word, we've been here a while and we're not even close to the end, is when we go to Eddie Kaspbrak's seeking out his token, and he comes back to the pharmacy or whatever, and they do that face mailed thing. I didn't go as late as you did. I went to the 7:30 showing and I got out at 10:45. But I'm assuming the demands of, a working day schedule affected my experience as well. The movie felt long. I don't know that I know what I would cut out of it. I just know it felt long. And I did think driving home last night, I wonder how many times I will rewatch this movie.
Yeah.
Because it is a chunk, man.
Yeah.
I've rewatched Endgame a couple times. A big part of that is because of my kids, and we've also watched it in bite-sized nuggets. And so maybe there's a future for this movie living on that way for me. Not so much with my kids right now, but just, I'll turn it on and watch maybe the teenage Ben Hanscom running into the Beverly or whatever. But I don't know. It's still hard to get my head around just what my future relationship with this film will be because of its length. And that's really important to me because, like I've mentioned, I've watched the Tim Curry miniseries countless times, and I've watched 2017, not as many, but, proportionately as many based on when they were released. And so I do think the spread of this film is going to hold that back in some ways.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you on that. And that was one of the things I think when we were getting into the third act last night that I remember being like, man, I don't know if I'll watch this in theaters again. And then it led me down the path of like, well, will you rewatch it? And I'm sure that I'll rewatch it eventually, but it was just a lot. It was a lot to take in. And granted, you're having to tell a lot of story, but my goodness, I really do feel like you could have cut certain things, and I'm with you. I don't know off the top of my head. Like I wasn't making a list of what those things were, but I just felt like that it was a chore, man. And I know that's weird coming from a guy that can sit down and watch Endgame, which is 3 hours. Sit down and watch it all day, every day. But it really was. It was a difficult movie to get through. But that being said, I don't want to sit here and crap on this movie. I thought it was great. I don't think that I enjoyed it as much as I did the first one, but I still think it's a very, very good movie.
Yeah, it's Muschietti's masterpiece, right? Like you can tell that guy had every resource he wanted, had all the time. The studio gave him a ton of time, and he pulled out everything in his bag of tricks. And I don't mean that, like you said, I don't mean that critically. I mean, not everything in this movie worked for me, but it's a really good movie. And I'll tell you this, I wouldn't call my experience watching this movie a chore. And I definitely was in a better place of like what time in my schedule it fell. I felt like I was on, again, I guess I'm trotting out all the tired cliches today. This really was a roller coaster, or maybe a safari. I mean, you ventured far and wide. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed it. My only criticism there is what the future will look like. And I do think I'll go back to the theater and watch this. One, you're going to get such a kick out of this, Derek. Friend of the podcast, this isn't the part you'll get a kick out of. Friend of the podcast, Mac Williams, texted me just as I stepped out of the theater and was like, hey, you want to go see it tomorrow, or are you going to tomorrow? And I was like, hey, if you want to go back, or if you want to go tomorrow, I'll come back and watch it with you. So that may still be on my docket. But, speaking of you as the 1%, so I'm watching this at AMC Theaters in Cookeville, Tennessee. I'm there with friend of the podcast, Jared Moore.
The antithesis of the Alamo Draft House.
Dude, just get ready for this.
I can't wait.
They didn't turn the surround sound on.
No.
All the sound in this movie came from the front two speakers.
Jeff, come on, dude.
I really don't even know what to do with him anymore, man. Again, I know the manager over there. He's great. And I've been to theater, when it was owned by Carmike, I went to a theater that he managed that was very good. Mm-hmm. So I have to lay this on AMC. And I was just kind of furious. The first... until Bill and Mike go on that ayahuasca trip to commune with the Indian spirits.
Hang on a second. Wahlberg.
What? No. Spoiler alert.
All right. Sorry, I forgot to do that, so we're good now.
Yeah, I did too. Until that point in the movie, it's a lot of dialogue. Mm-hmm. You don't really get like super loud creature feature until right before that when they're in the Chinese theater. And dude, I had a hard time hearing some of the dialogue. And I was sitting on the front row in the upper section where you can put your feet up on the, you'll know what I'm talking about. There's a separated, two sections of seating area separated by a walkway. And everybody kind of wants to sit in the first row of the second section because there's a metal banister there or whatever you can put your feet up on. I had a hard time hearing the dialogue, and it never quits, man. That is just, AMC is the movie company that keeps giving. I'm getting so hot just thinking about it, dude. It's crazy.
Yeah, that is messed up, man.
Well, and the thing is, like, go complain, right?
Sure.
But it's not like they're pausing the movie and rewinding it for me. And I know I've got 2 more hours of this film to watch, dude. Yeah. Enjoy that Alamo Drafthouse, pal.
Oh, I plan to. I'm squeezing every last drop of it out of here before I leave Missouri. Don't worry. Just come to Missouri and watch it with me. I'll go back and watch it with you if we go to the Alamo Drafthouse.
I legit, if I go back today, I'm going to be like, all right, can I get a pre-show commitment? You're going to turn on the surround sound.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'll quit griping about that. That sidebar is over. But
my goodness, how do you do that, man? That just.
Well, I heard somebody come in, like I could hear them come in the projector room. I heard the door creak open and shut, and they turned it up. They made it louder. There might have been some kind of, technical failure in the surround sound. Mm-hmm. But guess what, man? Get your crap together before the movie starts. Yeah. And pick a theater that either say, look, that showing has got to be canceled because we can't offer it to you, or you're going to have to go in knowing this, or anything other than letting people get in the movie and only get the sound from 2 speakers.
Yeah. Yeah, well, in that case, I definitely would go back, because if you can barely hear what's going on, then you definitely want to go back and check out and hear what you missed.
Yeah. So I guess a lot of this has been preliminary, and some of it being gripey. You want to talk about some good stuff so that people here aren't like, well, they hated it and crapped all over it?
Yeah, for sure, man. I do have a few formal complaints, but we can get to that in a little bit. I think the good stuff definitely outweighs the bad.
For sure.
Where do you want to start?
I guess the thing that struck me watching this, like, first off, is something we've talked about a lot, but we just get confirmation on it, and it's how well the casting of this movie worked. Not just in physical appearance, although that was incredibly consistent, but in continuing the characters from 2017. Even down to Henry Bowers, the guy they had playing old Henry Bowers locked up in the asylum looked like what I imagine one of those age-forward apps would make the kid who played the young version look like. Really and truly, in some ways, it was kind of stunning how much they corresponded to their young actors. Can I ask you a question on this front about the first time we meet older Ben Hanscom? So we're in, when they first bring Ben into the picture, we're clued into it because we see Hanscom architects or whatever on this conference room door. And there's a guy in there explaining to a board of CEOs or whatever, some architectural plans. And the guy they had doing it, I felt like...
Looked like the kid
age forward, so much so that I was like, there's no way that kid has aged to the point he could play that role, right? It's just been 2 years. Did you have a similar experience?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. I'm glad I'm not crazy.
Yeah, no, I saw that guy and I was like, oh my gosh, if people don't know the story. Like if they don't know, that this guy loses his baby fat and turns out to be a handsome fella, they're going to think it's him because in the face and everything, like he looked just like that guy. And I don't know if that was like digital CGI effects or anything, but my goodness, man, that was the first thing I thought. I was like, they're trying to set it up to where you think that is Ben. And kudos to Muschietti for doing that because it was a really good swerve.
Well, you know what, Derek? I'm looking through the IMDb trying to figure out who that actor was, and the credit I think this is listed as Big Guy, and it's played by an actor named Brandon Crane. Does that name ring a bell to you?
No, it does not.
Well, he's the guy who played young Ben Hanscom in the 1990 miniseries.
Get out of town.
No, dude. What a stinking masterstroke of casting. He looked like Ben Hanscom because he was Ben Hanscom.
Well, you know what? Forget every negative thing I had to say about this movie.
Dude, that is some meta stuff right there.
That's incredible.
Hand clap, Andy Muschietti, Gary Dauberman. Is it Barbara Muschietti?
Yeah, Andy's sister, pretty sure.
Yeah, I mean, good night, man. What a move. I'm so impressed right now.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that is really good.
Well, with the casting, I don't want to get into like criticisms, so I'm going to tread lightly here. But this movie, to me, was carried by obviously Chastain, McAvoy, Hader, and Ransone, and Bill Skarsgård. I thought that Jay Ryan did a great job of being the beefcake, but didn't bring a lot to the table otherwise.
I thought he was horrible.
Okay.
That's the one criticism I have.
Well, I'm gonna follow up then. Just add this onto your thoughts. Did they intentionally keep lines away from him, you think? Because I felt like he was marginalized. Take it and run.
Okay, so that's a possibility. I just thought that he was very wooden with his dialogue, with his delivery, and when I went back and did some research on it, he's Australian. So I wonder if he just has a hard time keeping that American accent.
Gotcha.
But dude, I thought he was. I did not like him at all. I thought he had the wrong vibe from the minute we meet him. And at first I was like, has this guy ever acted before? Like, did they just get a model and they're like, oh, you look kind of like what we want? And it just didn't make sense to me because the other casting in this is perfect or borderline perfect. And he's the one weak spot in this movie. He sticks out like a sore thumb to me. And to the point where I was actively rooting for James McAvoy to get the girl. I was just like, there's no way. And he and Chastain didn't have any kind of chemistry.
Right.
When he announces at the very end, or in the climax of the third act, that like he loves her and they're trying to like save one another, I didn't feel that.
Even her response to him, I don't know how many takes they had to choose from, but like she looked like it was awkward rather than an epiphany or endearing. You know what I mean? Like, oh wow, holy cow, this is not what I wanted or expected.
Yeah, with the miniseries with John Ritter and Annette O'Toole, you felt it, and you were excited to see them like get together, and that was one of the things that I was the most looking forward to in this movie was like getting to see the fat kid get his dream girl, Yeah. And even when like they're burning the tokens. And he's like, yeah, I kept it in my wallet for 27 years. Like, none of that felt real. This felt like a guy who was line reading in a multi-million-dollar movie. And I was so frustrated by that because I think you and I both have a soft spot for that character.
Absolutely.
And you want to see, you want to see this guy get what he deserves because that, the 2017 movie where he pulls her down and kisses her and basically rescues her from the deadlights, that's a really endearing moment in the movie. Mm-hmm. And it just never pays off in this. And I was really disappointed by that.
Man, I'm tracking with you. I don't think they, in hindsight, could have cast a Chris Pratt for this because he would, in hindsight, I think, have pulled something away from Bill Hader's performance.
Yeah, I was actually talking to. I apologize for interrupting you. I was actually talking to a friend of mine about this after the movie, and she said the same thing. She was like, Pratt can't be serious long enough to do that role, and especially when you got Bill Hader in there, like it would just be back and forth, joke all the time. And I guess I never really thought about that until she brought that up, but I wish that there would have been a better actor to choose from.
Yeah, the thing Pratt could have brought is a sense of humility, of a posture of humility towards the world. Like, Ben's a character who has redefined himself and become a self-made man. But every bit of that is built on top of what happened to him as a kid. And he's defined by not only, his relationship to Derry, but his relationship to Beverly. And so I think John Ritter did a good job of showing that in the miniseries. And I think the kid who played in 2017 also showed you a kid who had a lot of potential, but also was very self-aware. And Beefcake from Australia, again, he pulled the look off. Like, Hader's line that he looks like every European soccer star rolled into one is spot on. But he just didn't have the depth of personality, or at least it didn't come across.
Yeah.
Not to continue the theme of criticism, I'm hoping to work from like worst to best here. Sure. I wasn't blown away by Isaiah Mustafa's performance either.
Okay, well, go ahead, expound on that, and then I'll tell you how I feel about it.
The line delivery too. I felt like he was stilted and like was making choices about. I felt like I could tell when he was making a choice to stammer. Like it was on his face. Like I need to deliver this with a little bit of a halting, delivery at this moment, and I just. Compared to the rest of that cast, now, of course, he's out ahead of Jay Ryan, but I just thought, like, man, Mike, we need some gravitas with Mike. And this guy doesn't quite hit the mark.
Okay, let me submit to you that I felt that he wasn't given enough to work with.
Okay.
With Mustafa's Mike, everyone else in the Losers Club gets a personality. And it just feels like that. I mean, granted, Mike gets his role back as historian, which is something that you and I both lamented on about the original, or about the 2017 version. But besides that, man, he really doesn't have much to do in this movie. And I really thought that was not necessarily an insult, but it was really disappointing because to me, Mike has an incredible backstory. And I know this may sound hypocritical for a guy that was just like, cut the movie, but I wish that we had a chance to see more of his stuff. And I feel like that they kind of did a disservice to that character. Muschietti did a disservice to that character in both films. Because I feel like that we said sort of the same thing in the 2017 version, and we're saying the same thing here. And I don't know if there's a disconnect, like maybe Doberman and Muschietti just didn't know what to do with that character, or what the situation was, but Mike feels really tacked on. And it's sad because I think that you're supposed to have like this big hero moment with him where he decides to leave Derry and start his life over. I was really ambivalent towards it.
Totally get it, man. It's supposed to be this catharsis, like Mike's going to get to go to Florida, Yeah. And I just thought, okay. I mean, who is, like you said, who is this guy? How's he gonna reinvent himself? He's been living above a library for 27 years. What kind of marketable skills are we thinking he's taking with him? You know what I mean? Like it's just a mishandling of a character that you and I both agree is super important. It's just a shame. To move it more positively, though, I really wish we'd have had more time with Andy Bean as Stanley Uris. I thought he played that with real gravity and real seriousness, even before you get to the end of the movie and get a little extra dab of him, that little brief segment we have at the beginning of the film felt super weighty. And I think I'm probably being influenced by Andy Bean's performance in Swamp Thing, the DC Universe streaming series. I'm watching it right now. I've been pleasantly surprised and find it really good. And he is there in recognizable form fairly briefly, but nonetheless, it's probably impacting my view here. But he made much more out of the character than I expected anyone to be able to, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, perfect casting because he looks exactly like what that kid would look like.
Yeah. I
mean, he and Eddie, like if Jack Dylan Grazer doesn't grow up to look exactly like his adult counterpart in this movie, I'm going to be shocked.
Right. I'm trying to think who else. They made a really smart decision, I think, to lean back into the young kids. I figured we'd get a few flashbacks here, but we got so much more with them. And to Muschietti's credit, I'm assuming a bunch of that is new shots and not, stuff left out of the first film. They did a great job, better than, for comparison, Stranger Things season 3. They did a great job of making me feel like these kids hadn't aged from when we last saw them in 2017.
Okay, so it's funny you say that. I was doing some research after I got home last night, and the kids have aged so much over the last couple of years that they had to go in and actually digitally de-age them.
Well, they did a great job.
Yeah.
Because I felt like they really picked right up where we left off with them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I felt the exact same way, and kudos to everyone involved in that movie for making that decision to go back in and make them look like you had just shot these back to back.
Mm-hmm. In particular, just continuing a theme already, these films have done a good job of helping us to see, for instance, Sophia Lillis is like a future star, right? Or to give you Jack Dylan Grazer and Finn Wolfhard again and be like, nope, for real, they're on their way up. I think this film, more than anything, left me wanting more from Wyatt Olive, who plays young Stanley Ears. I think that kid has some emotional gravity as an actor, too, that I didn't quite see in Chapter 1. And so, like, I got in his IMDb, and he's doing some kind of series with Sophia Lillis where I think she becomes a super heroine, and he's there in the cast, and I'm definitely going to check it out because I want to see more from both of those kids.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
She was. I was just going to say she was also in. What was she also in? Something that we were watching, or something I was watching for half a second on HBO, where she plays the child version of an actress.
She was in Sharp Objects.
That's what it was. Thank you. And Amy Adams, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I wish we'd have got more with the younger version of Amy Adams in that series, because Sophia Lillis is great.
Yeah, she is. And going back to another point that we were talking about, when she is in we know it's Pennywise, but when she and Ben are in the classroom together and they're having that moment, again, more chemistry than either of their adult counterparts had.
100%, man. 100%. I could not agree more. Like, it hurt me, even though I anticipated this has got to be Pennywise. It hurt me when she delivered those lines about a fat, disgusting kid.
Yeah.
And it's because, like you said, you really believe that Ben has this deep set crush on her, and she's one of the few people in the world who kind of sees more to him than what the bullies around him have foisted upon him. It was such an emotionally powerful scene. I know that's a weird thought, but yeah, I was deeply invested in that one.
Yeah, as was I, and yeah, they did a really great job with that, and again, just had, in my opinion, just off the charts chemistry in that, and yeah, like you said, you feel it, and your heart breaks a little bit when she's delivering these lines, even though you're pretty sure it's Pennywise. So yeah, I think all those child actors are great. Who, if you were going to have to pick somebody from the adults that like stole the show or stood out the most to you, why would you pick Bill Hader?
I was just getting ready to say, we're kind of getting into the elites here and going from worst to least. I would probably go Chastain, McAvoy, and then Bill Hader.
Yeah, I mean, Jessica Chastain, I don't want to take anything away from her. I think that she did fine, but to me, the three people that anchored this movie were McAvoy, Hader, and Bill Skarsgård.
Right.
And I mean, kudos to Bill Hader. Like, I've always been a big Bill Hader fan from SNL to Barry to now, but I don't know what it was about this movie, but every time he was on the screen, you can't take your eyes off of him.
Yeah, so I know Bill exclusively from SNL. What was that character he did on Weekend Update? It was
Stefan. Yeah.
So that's my entire exposure to him. I haven't really watched any other movies that he's in, and I was right where you were at. Like, he's attention grabbing. He plays his part with real humor, but like a brokenness that's just below the surface. And it just exceeded what I expected from him as somebody who hasn't watched his career. So I'm 100% with you. This is a star turn to my mind. There's going to be a ton of people see this, and I know Bill already has a pretty high profile, but he's going to get a lot of like calls for leading men roles out of this, or at least the kind of Philip Philip Seymour Hoffman most important supporting actor roles. And based on what he did in this film, I think he deserves it thoroughly.
Yeah, man, 100%. He's so good, and I guess I don't want to jump ahead, but I do want to talk about this at some point. One of the things that caught me off guard with this movie was how much humor they injected into it.
Yes, absolutely.
Oftentimes, in my opinion, at the worst spots. But there's a lot of humor in this, and especially, going back and forth with Eddie and Richie. And Hader does Hader's obviously, a comedian and does a great job with it. But that ending scene where they're all in the lake and, he's cleaning his glasses and they're all kind of going back and saying like what Eddie would be telling them at that moment. And he just breaks down and just begins to sob uncontrollably. I was just like, holy smokes, man, that is such a powerful scene. And then to not only be just in the throes of grief, but then once his group is around him trying to support him, for him to come off of that quip, I was just like, man, freaking Bill Hader.
Some people get extra.
I thought he was terrific throughout the whole thing. And I'll tell you this, Jeff, I think that this movie solidifies anytime that people ask me like who my favorite actors are. I think I have to say James McAvoy, and
he's really good.
It's never a name that comes to like the forefront of my mind. I'm always thinking like Tom Hardy or obviously Robert Downey Jr., people like that. But even in movies that I don't like, looking at you, Split, James McAvoy is phenomenal in it.
Yeah, and there's carryovers, like his Bill Denbrough has some reference to his Professor X. But, if you take the X-Men franchise, this one, and Split as sort of the defining roles of his career, at least thus far, we've talked on here often about the actor who plays the same person in every role. That is not James McAvoy. There's common elements, but this guy's a different person in every role he plays, and it's impressive. He's stellar. Like, again, it was a high thing to inherit the moral credibility and inherent leadership qualities of the young Bill Denbrough, and James picked it up and ran with it, man. Like, I get that he's the linchpin to the whole thing. When Mike tells him, if you're in, everybody else will be in, I was like, yep, that's absolutely right. Yeah. These adults are going to make this counterintuitive decision largely based on if Bill's in or out. And James captured it.
Yeah, he did an amazing job, and his stutter was really good. You can get into farcical territory with things like that, and I never felt that way with him. I was just like, yeah, dude, this feels genuine, this feels real, and I can't say enough good things about James McAvoy. And, honestly, this movie made me want to go back and revisit like Glass. Sure. Just to spend more time with James McAvoy as an actor, getting to watch him do a masterclass in, different characters and things like that. And, I think one of the characters that he plays in Glass is Bill Denbrough.
Yeah, right. Well, you provided the transition to, to the pinnacle for me. You mentioned that this movie is funny in ways that maybe one you didn't expect, and then two that probably weren't the best. It wasn't the best time in the movie to be funny. So my theory on that is Muschietti decided to turn Bill Skarsgård loose and tell him, go do, your full wattage. And so I want to talk specifically about some of the unintentionally funny parts of this film, but I also want to talk about how glad I am to see Skarsgård get a chance to do everything he can with Pennywise. I kind of feel like this is Muschietti pouring everything out into a film, and I feel the same way about Skarsgård's performance with Pennywise. They give him room to do everything. And I was quite happy with it, even though I thought it did push parts of the film into emotional moments that weren't what was intended. Okay. Do I sense you disagree?
No, I don't at all. I was just waiting on you to give examples. I'm sorry.
Oh, well, I think you get the full range of Skarsgård from sinister, leering monster. I'm assuming we'll talk about some scary stuff. I'm just going to say, if you remember my review from 2017's version, I hated that clown for what he did to Georgie. That opening scene makes me furious with Pennywise. I didn't think they could go back there because that is such an iconic scene, but the little girl under the the bleachers.
Mm-hmm.
I could have killed Bill Skarsgård with my bare hands watching that play out.
Yeah.
But then you get to one of the inadvertently funny scenes. It's in that Ben and Beverly, it masquerading as Beverly scenes where Ben ends up in the locker, and Pennywise ends up behind him, and he delivers that line, "Give me a kiss, fat boy."
Yeah.
And dude, I just rolled. I just thought it was hilarious. Again, I don't know if that's what they were going for, but I was like, this cosmic entity murder clown is really a funny kind of guy.
Yeah.
Then a lot of it was vocal and visual, but that final confrontation with it, where he goes super big as the spider down to shriveled little worm who's being executed. Most of that's just in his face and his voice. And I believe both versions. I believe this is a towering monster, and I believe this is a sniveling little worm that needs to be put out of its, if not its misery, its existence.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I feel like they just said, "Hey, Bill, go for it." And they kept the cameras running, and man, they did a great job, and he did an incredible job. So those are my examples.
Yeah, for sure. The one that springs to my mind is when Beverly is in the house, and this is after Mrs. Kirsch has turned into a 9-foot tall naked monster, and Bev is running down the hall, and she's trying to get out the door, and she turns to look back, and he is in a human form, and he's doing the old Jack Nicholson Joker thing where he's taking the flesh-colored paint off and there's white underneath. But not only that, you see where he like cuts himself to make those shapes with the clown shapes on his face. And for me, that was incredibly jarring. Like, here's this entity that is preying off their fears and is doing a great job of like seasoning them up for the main course. And I think that was the first time where I was like, it's a wonderful juxtaposition from this evil, like naked 9-foot monster that we all kind of chuckle at to this really super serious. And even then he's laughing, and it's just, to me, it worked. I mean, to me, it was just a really, I don't know if I want to say powerful scene, but it was a 9 on the creep factor.
100%. He's bristling. There's this sinister awareness of a looming threat that's just radiating off of him. The only person I know who really compares to that in a horror movie, this is big praise, but it's Jack Nicholson. Like, he does this thing of like, I'm not really moving. I'm just kind of sitting here seething, but you realize that there is this pent up energy behind him that if the dam breaks, everything's going to turn blood red.
Yeah. And I think it was in that moment where I was like, oh, this isn't our mama's Pennywise. You know what I mean? Like, this is even from 2 years ago, like, this is a completely different character. And he's out for revenge, and he's out for blood, and he's going to do whatever it takes to get these guys. So kudos to him, man. He does a wonderful job of this. I, again, reading different things after the movie last night. I guess Bill Hader went up to Bill Skarsgård in full like clown makeup and everything, and he was like, "Dude, what kind of CGI did they use to make your eyes go the way that they do?" And apparently Skarsgård went, "Oh, you mean like this?" and did it, and just freaked Bill Hader out.
Good for you, Skarsgård. That's exactly what you want to do with that party trick.
Yeah, exactly. And I just thought that was just the perfect thing, but also hilarious thing to do in a situation like that.
Yeah, totally agree. Well, let's just talk about the movie a little bit now. I know maybe there's some people who are like, "Hey, can we talk about what actually happened in front of the camera?"
Yeah.
Can we start with that inadvertent funny stuff?
Sure.
So the other one for me was when the leper attacks Eddie Kasbrak, the adult version, underneath the pharmacy again, and he's choking him to death, and then he just vomits all that gray goop into his face. Was that supposed to be funny?
I don't know, man, but it was.
It was like I was rolling in my seat laughing at that.
Yeah.
And why do you think Muschietti put that sound clip in? That "Just Call Me Baby" pop song?
Oh, yeah. I don't know, man.
So that whole scene was weird to me.
Okay, yeah, thank you. That's exactly what I was just about to say. Like, that whole scene was just really strange, and we never really got a payoff with the mom situation. Like, I know that wasn't his mom, but also, like, I was just waiting on Pennywise to pop up as his mother.
Right.
And the whole thing was just weird, and not in a good weird.
Yeah, I really would. I mean, I'm assuming we're going to get like a director's cut of both movies smushed together eventually, and I hope Muschietti does a director's commentary.
A Smuschietti cut.
Look at you, boom, ching. Still got him, even though he's worn out, folks. Still got them shots.
I'm punch drunk now.
I want to know what he was thinking. There's nothing comparable to that specific scene where he laid pop music, just like one line of it, over some encounter with it, or even with like the losers hanging out, right? I mean, It just felt like it was from a different movie.
Yeah, it did. That whole scene just felt really weird. And I will say this, though. I don't know if you caught it or not, but as Eddie is in the drugstore, Andy Muschietti himself is one of the background characters.
Oh, no, I didn't catch that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Well, you could barely hear it, so I guess you wouldn't really be thinking about trying to look for directors and stuff.
Yeah, the only thing I caught, I picked up on it before my friend did, but the Stephen King cameo, when you just see him picking up over the book he's reading, it's like, oh, Stephen King's in this. And then they give you no ability to to wonder after that. Before we, I guess, leave this particular moment, I do need to say James Ransone was really good in this movie and really did a lot of heavy lifting. I actually think that weird scene we're talking about undercut one of the more powerful parts of the movie. When his Eddie Kasprak is dying, he's the one who tells them, make him small, because he said, I felt him dying, like I was choking him to death. And that's got to be a reference to him choking the hobo, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what he says.
Okay. Well, why undercut what is obviously needing to set up the most emotionally powerful part of the third act with that weird pop overlay and like the super long vomit into the mouth thing? If that had been like one spurt that went in his mouth, we would be horrified. But when it turns into a freaking fire hose of goo, it becomes vaudevillian. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well said.
And so it just, in a movie that I'm really impressed by, that's part of this twin set of movies that I'm really impressed by, that one to me feels like, I don't want to say misstep. It feels like, the cinematic equivalent of It, this creature from another world that landed on top of this movie. And I know I'm going on about it, but it just really stands out to me as like, what in the world were you thinking?
Yeah. Yeah, it seemed unnecessary, but it also seemed unintentionally hilarious. And I don't know what they could have done to keep it from being that way.
Well, I would have went all quiet. At the end when it kind of first reasserts itself in that big red balloon and it pops and everybody goes deaf, I would have went radio silent. And again, I would have had just a quick spurt that landed around Eddie's face and let him deal with the horror of, did that get in my mouth? Is it part of my, is it in my immune system now? What I wouldn't have done is turned on the fountain.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, I always thought that, like, in those situations, it was all just part of their head, like just part of their imagination. But he walks out of the pharmacy drenched in this grayish goop, and no one says anything to him about it. Like, the girl that has obviously lived there her whole life and was the girl that signed his cast and everything else, she's obviously grown up now. I'm sorry, even if I'm like the most cynical person, I'm going to look at a guy that's drenched in black tar or whatever and be like, hey, man, are you okay?
Yeah. And I'm assuming. Oh, go ahead. My bad.
No, you're fine. And I was thinking like, oh, okay, well, then maybe they made the choice of, okay, it's not real, but we're going to show that we're going to show him still in it, but everyone else doesn't see it. But then when he gets back to the end, he's still got it on and everyone else sees it.
Yeah, I'm trying to headcanon it. Maybe the losers can see it. It's probably the equivalent of that scene of the bloody eruption in Beverly's bathroom. Her dad can't see it, but the losers can. They help clean it up.
Yeah,
it's probably working on that same principle. Before we leave Ransone and unintended comedy, I already mentioned the "Give me a kiss, fat boy" line. That cracked me up too.
Yeah.
Ransone, when he gets attacked by what's that guy's name? I've mentioned it a couple times already. It just slipped my head. Henry Bauer.
Oh, yeah.
So when Henry Bowers is attacking him and he stabs him in the side of the face, and Ransone gets in the tub and he's pulling the curtain back, kind of like, hey, good talking to you, pal. And he pulls the curtain back. Then he stabs him, and then he like side shuffles his way out of the bathroom, and he delivers the line about the mullet. I mean, that whole, and even into the hallway where he's like, Henry Bowers is in my room. Just every bit of that was comedy gold. I don't know if they were going for it, but I was laughing the whole time.
Yeah, I was too. The mullet line is what got me the most, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, it got the biggest laugh out of the whole audience.
Yeah.
And again, it's one of those situations where I don't know if he felt that you needed that catharsis, that moment of what's the word I'm looking for?
Releasing tension.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
It's early, and I don't know if he felt like if he couldn't get a jump scare out of it, because there were several jump scares in this.
Yeah.
I don't know if he thought, well, if I can't get a jump scare, then I'm just going to get a laugh. Because that was what it felt like. It was either going to be one or the other in this movie. You were either going to, you could tell that something was about to happen, and you were going to get a jump scare out of it, or you were going to get an intentional or unintentional moment of comedy. And some things worked, and some things I was like, I don't know if I would be making jokes right now.
Yeah.
And this is coming from a guy who makes his living making jokes.
Sure. Well, I'm going to enjoy it. You know what I mean? Like I'm going to look back and be like, that was a funny sequence. I thought visually it was pretty cool too to have Bowers stabbed in the chest, holding the shower curtain on him, and then like him slowly pulling it off the rings and stuff. Like, it's not like that movie wasn't without sinister elements or compelling cinematography. Mm-hmm. It was funny. Any other comedic stuff that I'm not thinking about?
Man, I'm trying to think. I know that there were like several while I was watching the movie. Well, that whole scary, not scary, very scary, thing where they go in and there's the little Pomeranian, and they had mentioned before, like, something about a Pomeranian.
Yeah,
and,
maybe its true form will be a puppy.
Yeah. And we see that whole sequence. I mean, that was well done, but it was played for laughs.
Mm-hmm.
And just a lot of the back and forth between Richie and Eddie, which I guess, looking at the movie as a whole, was kind of playful flirting on Richie's part.
Yeah, so I guess, would you like to talk about that element right now? Because I get why they stuck that in there, but I'm upset about that for characterization's sake.
Okay. Yeah. I feel like that we need to talk about it because it's a pivotal part of this movie.
Yeah. Well, there are themes in the source material connected with Eddie about his sexuality.
Okay.
The two times that homosexuality show up in the novel is that there is this reference to some kind of homosexual encounter between Henry Bowers and I think Hofstadter, like in a junkyard or something.
Okay.
And then I think in the novel, it teases Eddie by basically pointing out he's not been in a meaningful relationship. And he says, who's your significant other, Eddie? What are your significant others? Or something like that a lot of readers over the years have taken as a reference to him being a closeted homosexual.
Okay. And
flipping it to Richie, whatever. But the whole thing about it is that these are friends, like lifelong, ride till we die, down since day one friends. And it's the power of their friendship that basically kills the monster, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so now that I'm having to consider if something about their attachment to each other was rooted in an unrequited crush, I just don't know if I like what that does to the friendship dynamic. And I don't know why we need it, since that is so very essentially part of Ben Hanscom's character.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think there's someone listening to this who's like, it's just because they're gay. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that, is this what happens, or rather, why does this need to happen when it replicates something we have between Ben and Beverly, and it makes us reevaluate why Richie and Eddie had a particular kind of friendship within the group of the losers? Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, I mean, I haven't read the book fully yet, but I do know that in the miniseries, the Harry Anderson, and forgive me for not knowing who plays the Eddie in that original miniseries, they seem more like they're best friends.
Mm-hmm.
And they seem like they are more best friends than anyone else in that group is.
Yeah.
And so when you lose Eddie in the miniseries, you feel bad for Richie because he lost his best friend.
Yes.
And I don't feel like you need to make more of that relationship than they were just really close friends and brothers.
Yes, I'm with you, because they were unique in that way. Like every friend group you've been a part of has that version, right? Like we're all really good friends, but there's two guys who have a chemistry or a connection or whatever more than others. And I guess I just don't like that has to be reduced to sexual attraction. Now, there's all kinds of different perspectives that can inform mine. And so, listener, if you're like, how are you missing this? Or this is what's obviously going on, or this is why your take's wrong, I'd love to hear it. I'm happy to be persuaded, because I want to like this more. And in fact, I think it gives the movie sort of the most interesting parallelism in the story. So just to stick this in as, well, I don't think I'm wrong in seeing this as sort of subverting some important stuff in the characters, but also I recognize what it does for the movie. This is a movie about bridges, right? So bad things happen on bridges. King has been clear that the genesis of the idea for it was the troll under the bridge fairy tale trope. So Ben is attacked by Henry Bowers and carved up on the bridge. This movie opens with just a devastating gay bashing that takes place on the bridge. Bad stuff happens on the bridge. By the time the movie's over, that is subverted by Richie carving his affections for Eddie into the bridge, right? So like maybe in all the ways that Derry has changed with the death of it, this is the most emotionally profound, that these bridges become a place of love rather than violence and murder. So I get like there's some cool stuff that comes out of this, but I've just got to think there's a way to do that without making us go, wait a minute, these characters that we have known since the publication of the novel as dear friends, now we're starting to think about them as
romantic.
Love. Yeah. I don't care for the change. And there's actually several of those in this movie. You know, you're talking about cutting stuff. I don't know if I'd cut it, but let me roll these at you.
Okay.
I don't really care for the idea that Mike's parents burned up in a fire rather than his aversion to fire being kind of calling back to the burning of the black spot in Derry. Everything in this movie is about basically like overcoming what happened to you in your childhood, right? Particularly leaning on friends to do so. I get why Muschietti said, let's make his more directly connected to his childhood, but I think it's just weaker storytelling. And it cuts into the idea that it has been sinister going back multiple generations that's still impacting the people who are alive in Derry today. So I would have rather had Mike kind of carrying the legacy weight of what it had done to his community rather than it being like, oh, yeah, guess what? He also killed, Pennywise killed your parents. And it just seems less subtle and much more direct.
Forgive me, but what happened to his parents in the book? I
don't know that we're ever told what happened to his parents in the book. Okay. I don't know that Mike was an orphan in the book.
Okay.
The thing that we have in the book is that there was, in the days of segregation in Derry, there was this nightclub called the Black Spot that kind of grew up organically as a place for, the African American community to enjoy dance parties and stuff. And eventually everybody died in a fire where they were locked inside. And really that scene in the 2017 movie when he's looking into the butcher house and those arms reach out, that looks much more like what you would imagine with a nightclub burning than it would with just two people trying to get out of an apartment. You know what I'm saying? The other thing that was weird to me was the underground clubhouse. How did Ben dig that out? That he references like, it was already kind of dug, but like, how did he get those giant wooden boulders down there? How did he move everything around all by himself with nobody noticing? How does it go undiscovered for 27 years? And the reason I think I'm kind of salty about this one is I feel like it was included just so it could be a grave for Ben later in the movie. Does that make sense? I don't know. Those are three elements. The Richie-Eddie relationship, Mike, not kind of carrying the weight of his community so much as just the childhood trauma, and then that weird clubhouse. Those are the three things in this movie that I'm like, those were not helpful changes. Thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah. I guess the clubhouse really didn't bother me that much, but now that you've said that, that does make sense. But I think the biggest thing that I had was, I don't know why we've got to, I don't care. Make Richie gay or whatever you want to do. That's fine. But I don't understand why the object of his affection needs to be Mike, because
You mean Eddie?
Yeah, excuse me, Eddie. Like looking at that relationship, I thought back to like you and I.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were to die at the hands of a murderous clown, I would mourn you just like Richie mourns you,
Mm-hmm.
or just like Richie mourns Eddie.
Yep.
There's no romantic elements,
Sure.
in our relationship. So I don't understand the need to tack that on. I'm fine with I'm fine with Richie being gay. And as a matter of fact, I thought that Finn Wolfhard did a fantastic job with that arcade sequence.
Man, that was incredible, dude. Yeah, he feels so vulnerable, and then when he's betrayed, maybe the second most gut punch scene in the whole movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I just don't understand the reason to change that dynamic in their relationship. The Mike thing, I mean, I think it just goes back to what we were talking about earlier. I just think that Mike was just a misused character in these in these movies. They really didn't give him much to do. They changed him in the first movie. He's not the historian of the town. They give that to Ben. They retcon that in this one, but he still just there's not much for him to do, and so you almost feel like that they give him this weighty backstory because they're like, oh, we really haven't done anything with Mike at all.
Yeah.
So we might as well just say that he had two drug addicted parents and they died in this fire.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And again, that's profound. I mean, like it would mess a kid up. But I think, again, inheriting that tradition of the way Pennywise has particularly preyed on his community is even more substantial because it kind of reflects the way that community has been preyed upon historically in different ways. You know what I'm saying? Like it was more substantial when it was Mike as the inheritor of the tradition rather than another guy dealing with mom and dad issues.
Right.
We've got those. We've got those in Eddie. We've got those in Bill. Like Mike was unique in that way, and they took it away from him.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really sad that that character just didn't have a lot of meat on the bones,
Yeah. The thing about the clubhouse, I realize that probably you're not alone and be like, that's a weird thing to get hung up on. It just took me out of the movie. I was like, he can't do this. Like, this is impossible. I don't know how excavated this thing is, but just moving those big, huge beams would be beyond his ability. And it replaces something that actually is credible and kind of does a better job of setting up the latent architect element. I don't know if you remember this. They just build a dam. They dam up water in the Barrens, and Ben kind of figures out how to make that happen. And like, it works. It's credible. It's something a kid his age could accomplish, and it might show latent structural and architectural skills. But that stinking huge clubhouse, no way, man. No way. And it just jarred me right out of the narrative. In a movie about celestial beings coming to Earth and killing generations of people, finally incarnating as a murder clown, the stinking clubhouse is the one I was like, nope, not believable.
Oh man, that's funny. I mean, I see your point. I guess it really didn't bother me. But it did seem far fetched. I do remember that. And even like the kids are like, how did you do this?
Yep.
And it would make sense if he's like, oh yeah, me and my dad, or me, whatever, we fixed it. But yeah, I found it. I just reinforced the walls. And of course, I guess, they did have the one part where like he leans on a pillar and part of the roof collapses. So
I mean, that's true, but dude, those pillars, he would have to fell a tree and saw a tree up. You know what I mean? Like, you're like, dude.
All right, Bob Vila, calm down. I understand. You're mad.
me and my neighbor rented a backhoe. I mean, like, there's just, I don't know, maybe it's just a guy who's had to work trying to like move fence posts and stuff that are much smaller even. You're just, that ain't happening, Ben. It ain't happening. I don't care if you go to that cool summer architecture program you talk about or not. This ain't happening, buddy. Derek, I think the last thing I've kind of got to talk to you about actually leads up to our big question about, is this movie scary? And so what do you have before we talk about the scariness of this movie?
I'm trying to think of what else there is to talk about this movie. I still feel like that we've been overly critical. Yeah.
Well, maybe some of this will actually, I don't know. I don't know if we're going to improve on that or not, because I don't think this movie was super duper scary.
Right. It wasn't.
But like, I really enjoyed this movie. Like and it's going to scare the, soul out of my wife when she eventually watches it with me. It's not like it's not a scary movie. I just, the first one was really scary.
Yeah. And
this one spent a lot of time calling back to scares from the first one rather than being scary.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's something that kind of bothered me. And on my way home, I was thinking about it. It was kind of upsetting. You kept hearing like, "Oh, this is going to be the scariest movie of all time," and et cetera, which is always hyperbolic in situations like this. But I did expect it to be scarier than the first one. Mm-hmm. Now, I do think that Bill Skarsgård was definitely scarier in this one. Mm-hmm. When he attacks that little girl, not only did I want to punch him in the face, but I also wanted to just run like a scalded dog. When she's like, "You're supposed to say 3," like that got me.
I know, man. They had me in the palms of their hands at that point.
Yeah.
Him banging his head on the glass while McAvoy's on the other side of the little neighborhood boy. That also, I was like, yeah. So anyway, carry on.
Yeah. But there was a lot of callbacks to the first one, to the point where I had a friend of mine come with me from work who had not seen the first one. And he was like, "Well, I read the book, so I pretty much know what's going on." And I was like, "Dude, I really think you need to watch the first one before you watch the second one." And there were certain callbacks to the first movie where after we got out of it, he was like, "Yeah, I wish I'd have watched the first movie."
Yeah.
Because maybe I would have felt that it was scarier if I'd have watched the first movie. And I agree with that statement. I don't think there's going to be many people that are going to watch this movie without watching the first one beforehand. But there was a lot more callbacks than I wanted or anticipated.
Yeah, I think what it boils down to me is I get that Muschietti is saying, well, these kids are coming back home and it's about dealing with childhood fears, and the clown wants to prey on these things that adults maybe wouldn't feel as powerfully if they hadn't been impacted this way as a kid. So I can get all that. But I also feel like they just ran back through the same beats without giving us the version that would actually get in an adult's head, right? Mm-hmm. So like, okay, we're going to get another it creature coming out of the fridge. Only this time it's their childhood friend's head. Well, I mean, it's surreal at that point. You know what I mean? Like they know that kid hadn't been around in forever, and this has to be some kind of phantasm that it's creating. Now, don't get me wrong, the creature effects on that were super cool. It made me think of Carpenter's It. So I was in on like the creature itself, but I would have just liked to see some other kind of scare. In the novel, you do have these adult themes. So like Beverly's abusive husband follows her to Derry, and Bill has to care for his wife, Audra, who's been kind of mind wiped. And Mike is dealing with being obviously the least successful of his childhood friends. You know what I mean? Like they're these more sophisticated adult world dynamics, and all those are just stripped away. And we go back to the haunted house, and we get back to the door, and we're going to go back to Beverly's bathroom and apartment. And, you know what I mean? Like, it's just too on the nose without actually growing. If this monster's supposed to be good at frightening people, he got worse as we moved from the novel to the 1990 miniseries to 2019's Chapter 2.
Yeah. Why do you think that they took the Audra thing out?
Probably thought that it was big enough without it. Probably thought that it was a storyline that isn't germane to the main story. But again, like with the abusive husband, Audra and the abusive husband show you how far Pennywise can reach, how he can corrupt even outside of Derry, how he can continue to torment these people as adults, not just kids. And like, considering the stuff that they changed, though, I would have much rather just had those elements left in rather than monkeying with the other alterations. Yeah.
Do you also think that they took those out to make it easier to swallow adultery?
Yeah, that may be something going on here. Now, they make it really clear when Bev leaves that husband, she sticks her wedding ring on the
on the door or on the
post or whatever.
Yeah.
The thing too, that even that scene though reduces her as a character in a way that frustrates me, because in the novel she basically clobbers him with whatever she clobbers him with in this one, but she tells him, if you ever come near me again, I'm going to kill you. And it is such a reversal of the woman she has been under his thumb. Like this call from Mike has reawoken a powerful part of her, and even her abuser has now had to deal with it. He doesn't pursue her until she's gone. He doesn't get brave till she's out of the room. It's such a shift. And like having her clobber him and just run out the door without that moment, to me, felt like it diminished Beverly. Like I want to see Beverly put her foot on the throat of this guy and say, you got away with it. But if it, she becomes the one dictating the course of the events of her life. Yeah. In the novel in a way that I think is better than this. So, I mean, anyway, the point that you raise is just that they did what they had to be like, Beverly's a free agent at this point, Yeah. McAvoy's not. That kiss was inappropriate for a married man, but Beverly's a free agent anyway.
Yeah. I just at the end of it where she's on that yacht with Ben and the dog, I just kept being like, that was a quick divorce.
yeah, that's true. They, to their credit, they do enough with the little bit we get with the husband to not just in like his sinister switch and like, why would you lie to me? But when she's running out, I don't want to be lewd, but the painting that's hanging over the stairwell is pretty suggestive. And I just remember thinking like, what woman lets that be the pose she's in front of her husband in the main display piece of their home? Yeah. So like, I guess they did try to bolster it a little bit that she has switched from, a woman under this guy's abusive thumb to dictating her own fate. But I just wish they'd done more.
Yeah. Yeah, I do too. And I agree with you. I think it was a disservice to that character. I think one of the reasons that we all fell in love with Sophia Lillis as Beverly is because she was that strong, empowered, emblazoned woman. And you want that from Jessica Chastain because you know that you can get that from Jessica Chastain. For sure. And it takes a long time in this movie before I feel like she lives up to that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, again, we've done a lot of like, this is where the movie went wrong. I really enjoyed the invasion of the Chinese buffet. I thought that little like crab baby face thing was creepy.
Yeah, I think I apologize for interrupting, but I just want to go on record as saying I think that whole scene was wonderful.
Sure.
And I almost wish we could have gotten more of that, like the calm before the storm, where we get to see these guys interact. And it's, you and I are part of a friend group that we've been friends for over 20 years or longer. And I felt like that's how we are when we all get together. And granted, it's few and far between anymore that all of us are in the same room at the same time. But when it is that way, that's how we are. It's
100%.
just it's a big joke fest. We're all having a good time, laughing, busting each other's chops. And so for me, I was like, man, that I'd like to see some more of that. But that whole scene is just, it's great. And then it just leads into this insane thing. So take it from there.
I just thought that all those little creepy crawler critters, a lot of that is in the novel and didn't get included in the 1990 miniseries, I'm assuming because of the limitations of effects. But the bat wing thing flying around and the underdeveloped chicken thing crawling around the table, like it was just off-putting, unnerving, and it did feel like kind of the thing this murder clown would do as an opening salvo to like break up their good time. And I love the element of the lady just walking in while Mike is trashing the table. I thought that was a perfect way to tell the audience these people are in real danger and they're entirely alone. They're the only ones who know what's going on. So I really like that scene too, from everything you said, from the camaraderie to the conclusion.
Yeah. I also for kind of just just the way that like all those things were hatching, I kind of thought that it was going to turn into some evil Megatron version of it, where like they would all form, like all combine,
like Voltron.
Yeah,
yeah, that's a funny idea. That needs to be in there somehow.
Yeah, sorry, I meant Voltron, not Megatron. Sorry, whatever football player you are. I only got 3 hours of sleep last night. So.
Sure. We understand.
Yeah.
The scene you mentioned where it is taking off its human guise underneath that apartment or whatever, I thought was great. And there's a version of this, like, the Joker movie that's coming out that's set in a parallel universe. Mm-hmm. I want to go to the universe where it showed up on Earth and took over a circus clown from that era. I'd love to go watch that. Like if it possesses a circus clown who used to be human, I would totally watch that.
Yeah.
That scene was incredible. And I'm trying to think of what else I just like deeply loved in this movie.
I loved the emotional gravitas of us finding out that Bill wasn't sick that day.
Yeah, that was a punchy scene too. I think I could have done without the bolt gun to the head stuff.
Sure.
But yes, that we find out he wasn't sick, and then we also have adult guy realize like sometimes you just don't want to play. It doesn't make you a moral monster.
Yeah.
This is its fault, not mine.
Yeah. And that was again, I feel like I've said this word several times today, but that was a catharsis for Bill, who has clearly been holding on to that guilt for years.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe not, because I don't know how much memories,
sure,
stuck around, but you can tell that while he's there, his sole purpose is to make sure that it doesn't happen to anybody else. And for the kid in the Hall of Mirrors to get killed, which was, golly, man, it was such a great scene, but also such a terrifying scene.
Mm-hmm.
For that little kid to get killed in front of Bill, and for Pennywise to taunt him the whole time. For Bill to finally have that breakthrough of like, you were the best big brother ever.
Yeah.
To me, it was really good, and it was just very, very, I guess, weighty would be the right, words for it. But it also, for me, solidified the fact that like Bill is the hero of the story.
Sure. Now there is a version of this where, like, I talked about parallelism, right, with the bridges earlier. Mm-hmm. Another alternative vision of this movie for me would be to parallel the evil clown, now that I know what Bill Hader can do, with the guy who's the clown of the Loser Club.
Yeah.
And let him kind of grow into that. Because we get hints of that. Like, he's the one who pep talks Eddie, right, and gets him to jump in the hole. And if Eddie's not down there, he doesn't carry the iron, whatever, fence post or whatever that first wounds the clown. So I'd maybe like to see a movie where that's explored more. Because, again, Hader could have pulled it off, I believe.
Sure.
But yes, it's Bill's story, and Bill brings them together, and it's a beautiful story. I mean, we've talked about that countless times on this very podcast series. Every time we've looked at one of these adaptations, it's a coming of age story that just ends perfectly.
Yeah.
I was just
going to say, while we're on that subject, you gotta be kidding me. I forgot what I was going to say. Go ahead. I'll remember it.
That's okay. I was just going to point out that I think they went big and like, I don't want to say gory, because this wasn't a particularly gory movie, but they went much more shocking, much more visceral in this. Mm-hmm. I think in part to help us come away as horror fans being like, we're okay with a super happy ending for most everybody here. Mm-hmm. Obviously Eddie's dead, and Stan, but these guys get a happy ending. We might be less satisfied with some of it than others, but this movie in some ways is sort of a fairy tale, or in the traditional or classical sense, a comedy. Comedies end in a wedding, and we end up with being in Beverly on the boat. I guess I'm kind of surprised by it ending so well, considering all the modifications they made to the movie. Mm-hmm. But they seem to have ramped up the eerie, scary, jump scary stuff to help us go, no, it was a horror movie. It's just a horror movie that ends on the best possible note.
Yeah. Did you expect something bad to happen with just how good it ended? Like, did you expect Pennywise to come back, or did you expect... Because there was a like 10% thought in my head going like, oh, they're going to rewrite this thing and turn it into I don't necessarily think a sequel, but this is wrapping up too nicely. You can't do this in a horror movie.
Yeah. So my anticipation on this, and actually, I hate to sound so hipster, but the book did it better.
Mm-hmm.
The way the book ends is that Derry falls in on itself. The whole town falls into the sinkhole.
Okay.
It doesn't happen instantaneously the way we get, the collapse of the house on Neibold Street. But, it's kind of like, hey, can you believe what happened to this small town in Derry? There was a huge sinkhole and the town fell into it. I actually like that a lot because what that tells you is the town was built on it. Mm-hmm. And once it is gone, it falls in. So Mike just happily driving away from this pristine-looking Bostonian town, I just like, man, I think I'd like to see greater stakes than this. Mm-hmm. And I think, too, in the novel, I can't remember as well, but I think, ironically, I think in the novel they start losing their memories again.
Okay. That
there's something about the power of it that continue. They make reference to this in the movie, like it put an infection in us, it's been metastatizing, and that's also more of a somber note that they, the last thing it takes from them is their memories of each other. Mm-hmm. And those are two things that I thought may be coming down the pike to say everything wasn't, they lived happily ever after.
Yeah.
But I'm cool with it. I'm happy with horror movies that end on happily ever after. So yeah. I don't hate this. I was waiting, expecting something like that.
Yeah. Speaking of the endings, I remember what I was going to say now. Did you enjoy the ongoing joke where Bill's books sucked?
Because of the ending?
Yeah.
Dude, I got a little wore out by that. The first time they mentioned it, I thought it was a funny, like, reference to Stephen King, basically. Mm-hmm. And by the time Stephen King is saying it, I was a little worn out of the joke. Yeah.
Yeah.
No pun intended, they went to the well too often.
Yeah. I thought it was good up until a certain...
okay.
I thought it was good up until a certain point.
I thought you were burying my take there.
Oh, no. Not at all.
Okay.
No, I was with you. I think when Stephen King says it, that's when I was like, okay, we get it. Wrap it up.
Yeah, and if Stephen had been just the second person to say it, or sorry, only the other person to say it, maybe you hear it in the director at first, and then you hear it from Stephen King, that'd been fine. But they just used it too much.
Yeah. Yeah, I completely agree. But I did think that it was funny that we're going meta in this horror movie.
Mm-hmm. Well, they did. I mean, when you cast the Ben Hanscom from the 1990 series, you're asking for people to go meta.
Yeah, for sure, man. I'm still blown away by that.
Yeah,
freaking well done.
For sure. To just get one more note about scary stuff in this movie, and it was brutal to watch that opening scene of those guys getting beat up on the bridge.
Dude, it affected me more than I ever thought it would have.
Yeah, man. Same deal. Like, I didn't expect them to be so brutal about it. It's referenced in the novel. Mm-hmm. And so, like, I wasn't surprised it was there, but to, like, make us live through every bit of it was really powerful. Mm-hmm. And when the one guy said, after he's been just beaten to a pulp, he said, "I still hate your hair," I was like, you go, man. You're a freaking hero. Just so brave. That was really powerful to me.
I wanted to kiss that guy right then.
Right. When we see Pennywise on the banks kind of fishing him in, and then when his boyfriend gets down there and he sees him in the arms of the clown, and then Pennywise just takes a bite out of him, that was pretty, considering everything in this movie didn't land as horrifying as I think they were going for, that was a pretty punchy way to start this movie off.
Yeah.
And just the way his mouth changed, I remember being like, oh my gosh. So, I mean, that with Pennywise, his mouth's going to alter, but the narrow elongation and whatnot, I thought it was really powerful.
Yeah. It was a crazy way to start the movie. I'll say this to you as well, though. I was talking to a guy that went with me to the movie, and when they're all sitting around talking about the events of what had happened, I got this huge pit in my stomach thinking like, oh, please don't make this the scene that everyone thinks. Like, please don't make this the scene that we've all been dreading.
Oh, yeah.
Happening.
Yeah.
Because it just seemed like just the look in Beverly's eye and everything, something was about to happen. Yeah. And I've never been happier to see a janky piece of glass in my life, because I was like, oh, thank God, this is where they make the blood oath.
100%. So, listener, if you're not tracking, we've referenced this other places. I'm betting you'll know when we reference it. But there's a scene in the novel with Beverly and the losers that Derek and I have really wondered how it didn't kill Stephen King's career. And if you know what we're referencing, you know what we're referencing. If not, I don't encourage you to go look it up, because it is not. This is one of those times when the book is profoundly not better.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought.
But if you want to give it a goog, you can find it pretty quick.
Sure.
But I second Jeff's statement. Don't give it a goog.
Yeah, there's some things you can't unknow.
Yeah.
This falls into that for me. So I wonder maybe if Muschietti was like trying to play with the audience that way, who knew that maybe this was another meta move on his part. But like you said, yeah, let's cut hands. Let's cut hands all day long, as long as we don't have to go there.
Yeah, matter of fact, I'll cut my hand just as long as we don't have to go to that dark place.
100%. 100%.
Yeah, it terrified me, dude. Like I was just sitting there going, "Oh, I'm going to hate this movie if this is how it starts."
Mm-hmm.
There will be no turning back for me if he puts this scene in this movie. So I'm really glad that they didn't do it.
Well, buddy, I think emptied my bag. I'm gonna reserve the right to come back to this film again. When I watch it again with probably better rest and more time to decompress. But until then, my bag is empty.
Yeah, man, I think so. I do feel like that we focused on the negative more so than I think either one of us wanted to. I do want to stress that I really enjoyed this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I liked it as much as the first one, and we'll get into that in a second. But I think it's a great companion piece, and I think that it's a really great movie that is anchored by two incredibly gifted casts. I've read a lot of stuff online where it says that like, oh, the adult cast doesn't have the same charm as the kid cast. Well, let's be honest, man. That's life, right? Like, adults normally don't have the same kind of charm that kids do. And but I also said that about the 1990 miniseries, that I connected more with the kids than I did with the adults. But I feel like for this one, I don't see much of a difference. Like, both these casts did an amazing job becoming this lovable group of losers. Mm-hmm. And there's obviously there's a couple of exceptions. We've talked about it. Ben and Mike are really the weak links in this thing, but everyone else does an amazing job, and you genuinely feel like that these are long lost friends that were inseparable as children, grew up, moved away, and now they're back in each other's lives. And I for one am glad that like they didn't lose their memories this time. That when Mike tells Bill he loves him at the end of the movie, I felt that
for sure. Almost enough that I'm like, I bet these guys are going to move near to each other. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Mike's got to find a new place to chill anyway. I know he wants to go to Florida, but he's going to end up like the high school friend who moved into town,
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. So, all right, man. Well, let's do it. Let's do what everyone's here for. Jeff Wright, did you see something scary?
Yeah, I did. I didn't see something that was scary to a degree that I anticipated I would. Mm-hmm. But I saw scary stuff. The little girl under the bleachers, the little boy in the Hall of Mirrors. And I'll even tell you that the old lady in the apartment, Bev's old apartment, worked really well for me. I mean, a lot of it was telegraphed, mm-hmm. but when we see her in the background as Bev is rereading the postcard Ben sent her, and she just kind of does this jangly man dance, for lack of a better term, mm-hmm. When she scurries through the doorway naked, and even just building up what's going to come running out of that black kitchen, mm-hmm. That all worked for me. And I'll say this. I know some elements of that were in the trailer, and yet again, I am super happy that I plugged my ears and closed my eyes every time that trailer came on, because if I know some of what's going on in that scene from the trailer, if I've seen some of the visuals, it doesn't work for me at all. Mm-hmm. So, yet again, it just pays to avoid trailers for movies you want to watch.
Yeah, I was just, you kind of, I don't want to say you stole my thunder, but that's the point I was going to make is if there's ever a great example of Jeff hates trailers, it should be that, because that should be terrifying. Mm-hmm. And if you're going into it cold, it has to be terrifying. For the rest of us that have seen that 87 million times, you're desensitized to it by the time that you get to the movie. So the more you and I do this podcast, Jeff, the more you are proselytizing me into your line of thinking on on trailers.
We had to change it to We Hate Trailers.
Yeah.
Well, hey, so sidebar. I know we're talking about how scary this movie is and making a recommendation, but was Black Christmas a preview for you on this one?
It was.
So they give away the thing with Carrie Ewell's character, and I just thought, I'm not going to watch your movie. I leaned over to Jared and was like, why show me that?
Yeah.
So anyway, spoiler for the Black Christmas trailer, but like, if you think you want to watch the remake of Black Christmas, stay away from the trailer because they just threw in an element they should not have. You probably could have guessed it just based on the casting, but don't show it in the freaking trailer.
Yeah.
So,
why give away the bag when you're just trying to tease?
Yes, 100%. And like I said, I'm not going to watch your movie now. Yeah. I probably would have shown up at Christmas time to watch that in theater, and like now it'll be a red box for me. So congratulations.
You played yourself.
Yeah, played yourself.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyway, Derek, what did you see something scary?
I did. For everything that you mentioned, the little girl. The little girl, the boy in the fun house, but not only that, the opening scene, man. And I mean, I know that's a different kind of scare, but I'm with you 100%. Yeah, I just remember watching that scene and thinking, my God, people go through this on a regular basis.
And man, if it's happened one time in history, you know what I mean? Like, even if we live into a better world where this stuff isn't a regular occurrence, and I hope we do, just that it's ever happened, you know? Anyway, not to get on your point.
Oh, no, you're fine. It just broke my heart. Like, it was really, it was really just... It was very tough to see that right in your face. And, you know, that's one of the things that we talk about on this thing a lot is like, we don't want to go to movies to see real life situations, right? We go to movies to escape. And I guess it's sort of jarring to see something so real in a movie about an alien that takes the form of a murder clown. And so it was really difficult to watch. And not only that, but the stuff with Bev's dad, it's always been hard for me to watch that kind of stuff. And so yeah, man, we definitely did see something scary. I feel like you're about to say something too, so go ahead.
I'm just glad you mentioned the stuff with Bev's dad, because that is, I wouldn't have remembered to say it. I don't know that I've felt as grossed out in a horror movie in a long time. Yeah. And we never see him do anything other than like be too hostile. You know what I mean? Like that's a pretty excellent demonstration of how leaving things unsaid or things not shown on camera, but giving us the setup for it is, it was as jarring as anything in this movie. Yeah. I guess it had just moved into a different part of my brain, but when he's like, you look like her, dude, you know, he says, you're nothing like her. That first part lands because you're like, dude, we know where that's going. Yeah. And then when he covers her in her mom's perfume, I mean, dude, it was just, I really could have got up and walked around the theater from tension. You know what I mean?
And not only that, but it was another one of those situations where I was like, if you show anything, I'll hate this movie.
Well, and continuing other themes from previous points in this episode, that stuff happens in real life. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's just, you don't want to live in this world sometimes.
No. Yeah. And it was just really, it was just a really difficult thing to have to go through. And, you know, of course, you're just sitting there watching it, right? Like I say, go through in the situation of being like a spectator in this thing. God forbid anybody that's listening to this ever have to deal with anything like that. Sure. But yeah, there was definitely some scary moments in this movie. Let's detour for just a second. Can I tell you the craziness that happened at the unnamed theater that I watched this movie at?
Please do. And again, this is the theme. So we've already watched the first part of this movie in 2017 with a baby. Right. I watched it with two speakers. Right. What are you going to pile on top of this?
So as I'm pulling up to the unnamed theater, I get out of my car and a swarm of clowns file out of the movie theater.
Oh, no. Oh, my word.
And
what did you do?
I'm talking like Ronald McDonald looking clowns from killer clowns from outer space looking clowns. And I literally, Jeff, like grabbed onto my car. Because I'm not a big clown fan anyway. Right. And so I was just like, okay. And so in my head, I'm sitting there thinking, if there's a freaking clown in my movie theater, I may not be able to watch this movie tonight. So I go. Yeah. So I go into the theater, I go into the lobby, and the lady sees me and she's like, "Hey, what's going on?" I'm like, "Not much. Did you guys do like a special clown showing tonight?" She goes, "Yeah, at 7 o'clock we did a special clown showing. Everyone dressed up like a clown for it." I'm like, "Okay. Are there going to be any in the 10:45 showing of the movie?" She goes, "Oh no, they'll all be gone by then." I went, "All right, sounds good." And so as I'm going out of the lobby, I see a dude, which I've put it up on all my social media, but I see a dude that looks just the spitting image of Pennywise walk into the bar. And I was like, "Oh, I got to get a picture of that guy." And so I just make a line towards him and I'm like, "Hey man, can we grab a picture?" And he's like, "Yeah, absolutely." And so we're doing the selfie. He brought a fake hand with him to do the wave thing. You remember in the first one where Pennywise is like eating a kid and he looks up at one of the guys and he waves their hand at him?
Mm-hmm.
He brought a fake hand to do that. And so if you haven't looked at any of my social media, or if you haven't looked at our Facebook group, We Saw Something Scary, check this guy out. He, besides being a little bit like thicker than Bill Skarsgård, he is perfect, man. Perfect. It's so good.
Yeah. The universe really conspired to have you, to give you the best, horror version of watching this movie.
Yeah.
I'm a little envious.
So not only did that happen, but as we make our way into the theater, for those of you that are familiar with the Alamo Drafthouse, they tend to have their pre-show fit the theme of the movie that you're watching. So we were treated to clips from the Bollywood version of it, which I'm gonna have to track down and watch.
Yeah, okay. Maybe that's a Patreon bonus right there, buddy.
I think so, man. I really do think that it's going to have to be. So we got to see that. They also gave us a history of Pennywise the Clown. Gosh. Which was really great. So again, I'm really not trying to rub it in anyone's face, but Alamo Drafthouse is the greatest theater in the history of movie theaters, and eventually I'm going to bring one to Tennessee.
Yes, I'm gonna hold you to that.
So, I felt like I needed to let you guys know just how incredible my showing or like my viewing of this movie was for the first time, and very, very happy that I decided to go to Alamo for this one.
I'll be over here creating a voodoo doll.
Thought you were going to say, "I'll be over here turning up the volume," because I couldn't hear anything that just happened.
Yeah, we'll see. I'll see your Bollywood It and Flock of Clowns. I got to watch this movie in stereo, pal. So, checkmate.
It's stereo and standard definition, so I win the day.
Oh, man. Everybody wants to have an authentic experience. I had an authentic experience. Went to the Kraft movie theater that...
Oh, yeah. Come on, AMC. Just do better.
For real. Or shut down and let another franchise come in. Anyway.
Yeah, one or the other. All right. So we saw something scary. On a scale of 1 to 10, where you landed on this one?
I'm going to go 6.5.
Okay.
It didn't live up to my expectations quite fully. Mm-hmm. It's better than most. Visually, it's beautiful. Muschietti has incredible command of the camera and even the technology of like de-aging actors and using CGI in a way that's really effective. So like I want to acknowledge all that. Mm-hmm. I just don't think it lived up to my expectations, and it has some real weaknesses. So I've got to knock it a few points.
Okay. I'm actually going to be the horror uncle in this situation, and I'm going to give it a 7.5.
Hey, go for it. I want to love this movie. Like I want people to watch it. It's not a bad movie.
Yeah.
It's hard to live up to chapter 1, and I don't quite think it did.
Yeah, I agree. I gave chapter 1 a 9. If you listen to the episode that we released a couple days ago, or yesterday, I guess, I gave it chapter 1 a 9. I think that this is, like I said before, I think this is right below it. There are some glaring faults with this movie, and I do think that one of them is the runtime. I think if you knock anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes off this movie, trim the fat. I'm not saying get rid of key elements to the movie. I'm just saying trim the fat. I think that this is an infinitely better movie, but there are some problems with it that we've addressed. But I would not tell anyone to not go see this movie. As a matter of fact, if you're a horror fan, I think it's appointment viewing, and I think you go this weekend and watch it and let it make all the money so that genius directors like Andy Muschietti can continue to make the thing.
Sure.
Kudos to Bill Hader. Kudos to Bill Skarsgård. Kudos to James McAvoy. Phenomenal performances. Kudos to the gentleman that played Eddie, the adult Eddie. I don't remember his name, but that guy was amazing. And I think that we're going to find out that there's a DNA test out there where he's actually Jack Dylan Grazer's father.
Yeah, I could believe it.
Either that or they cloned him. One of the I don't know.
Just age progressed it.
Yeah, but yeah. I don't think you'll enjoy this movie as much as you did the first one, but it's still an incredible ride, and it's a great companion piece to the first movie. So go out there this weekend and watch it, and then after you watch it, go to our Facebook group. We Saw Something Scary. Let us know what you think about it. Starting tomorrow, which will be Saturday, September the 7th, where you're going to put up a Wahlberg post on We Saw Something Scary, where you guys can go in and just do a deep dive, and you can tell us what you liked, what you didn't like, all that good stuff. And as I'm sitting here thinking about this, Jeff, maybe that's something that we do from now on with these movies. We release the episode, and then we do a Wahlberg post where people can go on and talk about them.
100% cool by me, man.
So look out for that. Look out for that on Saturday, whenever you're listening to this. And we would always love to hear from you. Of course, you can get us in the Facebook group. That's probably the best way to do it. Follow us on all of our social media, Scary Podcast on Twitter, Saw Something Scary on Instagram, of course, the Facebook group. Join our Patreon at patreon.com/Scary Podcast. We put up 2 bonus episodes a month, and you'll want to join us for those. And also, of course, make sure and rate, review, and subscribe to this show. And do us a huge favor this week. It is going to be a huge movie. And for huge tentpole movies like this is where we tend to get a lot of new listeners. If you do us a favor and just share this episode on your social media, on your Facebook, on your Twitter account, whatever you listen to, put it in your Instagram story, however it is, make sure that people know about us and try to get the word out as much as possible. And we would forever be indebted to you for that.
100%. And thanks to all those who have done so in the past. We're an independent podcast, and we grow this thing organically through recommendations, and it just couldn't mean more to us when people do this on our behalf. And then, we reap the rewards in a lot of ways of people just taking the time to share, because we've met incredible people through the podcast. So thanks to those who've done it in the past, and thanks for those who are going to take Derek's request here and act on it.
Absolutely. So thank you guys for that. As always, he's at Right Jeff. I'm at Derek Zoo, and we are out of time. Guys, thank you so much. We went long for him today, and I hope that you guys enjoyed this episode on It Chapter 2. Let us know what you think about it, and we'll be back here next week with an all-new episode. I don't know what that'll be on yet, but we'll figure that out in the coming days, and we'll let you know. But until then, for Jeff, this is Derek, reminding you to stay away from clowns in sewers, blind men with turkey basters, and white people with teacups. We'll see you guys back here next week. Bye-bye, man.